June of 2025, 150 ballistic missiles cross the skies of the Middle East toward Israel. More than 100 drones follow the same route. In 12 days, 1,190 people die in Iran, 28 in Israel. But what few realize is that all of this was described 2,000 years ago by a carpenter from Galilee sitting on the Mount of Olives. How can a text from the 1st century anticipate every detail of the greatest direct confrontation between Iran and Israel in modern history? Think of the scenario. 2,000 years ago, missiles did not exist, drones did not exist. Not even the idea that a weapon could traverse hundreds of kilometers in minutes existed. When Jesus sat on that mount, looking at the Temple of Jerusalem, his disciples asked something that would echo through all following generations. They wanted to know when the end would be. They wanted to understand the signs. And Jesus, instead of giving a date, delivered a map. A map that today, 20 centuries later, you can place side by side with newspaper headlines. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24, verses 6 and 7, Jesus declared with absolute clarity, "Ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." For those living in the 1st century, these words seemed generic. Wars had always existed. Conflicts between peoples had been part of human history since Cain and Abel. But observe the detail that many ignore. Jesus was not speaking of just any war. He was describing a specific pattern that would intensify as time passed. And that is exactly what we are witnessing. The conflict between Iran and Israel did not emerge from nothing. Since the Islamic Revolution of 1979, the Iranian government has assumed an avowedly anti-Zionist stance. Iranian leaders repeated for decades that Israel should be wiped off the map. It was not empty rhetoric. It was a declaration of intent that shaped Tehran's entire foreign policy for more than 40 years. During this period, Iran financed and armed groups such as Hamas in the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthis in Yemen. Together, these groups form what analysts call the axis of resistance, a network of militias spread throughout the Middle East, all with a common goal: to surround Israel, pressure its borders, and keep the Jewish state in constant alert. But what was once a proxy war has transformed into a direct confrontation. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas launched an attack against Israel that killed approximately 1,200 people. 251 hostages were taken to Gaza. The Israeli response was immediate and devastating. Intense bombardments, a blockade of water, electricity, and fuel. The counterattack was not limited to Gaza. Israel began attacking Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, Iranian forces in Syria, and even Houthi positions in Yemen. Consider the scale of this. A single attack triggered a chain reaction involving at least 6 different countries: Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Iran. Not to mention the direct participation of the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Jordan in intercepting Iranian missiles. Nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, exactly as Jesus described. But the most impressive element of this equation is still missing. In April of 2024, Israel bombed the Iranian consular complex in Damascus, Syria. The attack killed 16 people, including a high-ranking general of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Iran's response came on April 13th. For the first time in history, Tehran launched a direct attack against Israeli territory. 170 drones, 30 cruise missiles, and 120 ballistic missiles crossed the sky toward Israel. The Israeli defense system, with American support, intercepted 99% of the projectiles. But the message was delivered. The war had ceased to be merely by proxy. To give you an idea of the scale, imagine 320 objects flying through the sky at the same time, toward a single country. It is as if all the commercial planes of an entire airport took off simultaneously carrying explosives. And all of this happened in a matter of hours. Then something even greater arose. In June of 2025, Israel launched Operation Ascending Lion. For 12 consecutive days, Israeli forces attacked nuclear facilities, military bases, and command centers in 27 Iranian provinces. Nuclear scientists were assassinated. Leaders of the Revolutionary Guard were eliminated. The Natanz nuclear facility was partially destroyed. Isfahan was damaged. More than 200 Iranian civilians lost their lives. Khorasan responded with Operation True Promise 3. 500 missiles and 2,000 drones were launched in just 4 days. Israeli cities such as Haifa and Tel Aviv suffered direct impacts. More than 100 houses were damaged in Hod Hasharon. A communications blackout hit parts of the country. 12 days of conflict, 1,218 combined deaths, a ceasefire mediated in haste by the United States, and a region that would never be the same again. But behind the numbers, there are stories that the news rarely tells. Entire families running to shelters in the middle of the night in Tel Aviv. Iranian children waking up to the sound of explosions they had never heard before. Israeli mothers hugging children without knowing if the next missile would be intercepted or not. Iranian parents seeing their homes destroyed by bombs dropped from planes they never saw. War is not just statistics. They are faces, they are names, they are lives interrupted. An Iranian nuclear scientist who left home for work and never returned. A young Israeli who was in a cafe when the sirens sounded. A grandmother in Haifa who spent 12 days in the shelter, praying in Hebrew the same prayers her ancestors prayed during the Holocaust. A merchant in Isfahan who lost everything he built in 30 years of work in a single night. Measure the human weight of this, and then consider that Jesus saw all of this 2,000 years ago. Every tear, every scream, every life lost. He knew these days would come, and even so, he chose to die for each of these people. Israelis and Iranians, Jews and Muslims, all equally loved, all equally in need of salvation. Now measure this with what Jesus said. Ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, but the end is not yet. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Beginning of sorrows. In Greek, the word used is odinos, the same word used to describe the contractions of a woman in labor. Jesus was saying that these conflicts would be like contractions. They would start spaced out. Then they would become more frequent, more intense, more impossible to ignore. And is that not exactly what we are seeing? In 2024, the confrontation was limited. A few hundred missiles, a calculated response, a desire for de-escalation. In 2025, the scale exploded. Thousands of projectiles, attacks on nuclear facilities, direct involvement of the United States bombing 3 Iranian facilities. In 2026, the tension continues. On the 28th of February, new American and Israeli attacks shook Tehran. The contractions are accelerating. But there is another sign in Matthew 24 that few connect with current events. Have you heard of the parable of the fig tree? In verse 32 of the same chapter, Jesus told the disciples to learn from the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise ye, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. In biblical tradition, the fig tree represents Israel. The prophet Hosea chapter 9 verse 10 recorded the words of God. I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first ripe in the fig tree at her first time. Jeremiah chapter 24 used good figs and bad figs as symbols of the Jewish people. The connection is clear. When Jesus spoke of the fig tree budding, he was prophesying the rebirth of Israel as a nation. And when did that happen? May 14, 1948. After nearly 2,000 years dispersed among the nations, the Jewish people returned to their land and declared independence. It was an unprecedented event in human history. No other nation has ever recovered its sovereignty after 19 centuries of exile. Historians call it a political miracle. The Bible calls it prophetic fulfillment. Think of the scale of this. In 1948, the Jewish population in Israel was only 650,000 people. Today, there are more than 7 million, an increase of more than 10 times in less than 80 years. Jews from more than 120 different countries have returned to the Promised Land. From Yemen, they arrived in planes in an operation called Magic Carpet, carrying 49,000 people in less than 2 years. From Ethiopia, more than 14,000 came in a single 36-hour aerial operation. From Iraq, from Russia, from Europe, from the Americas, from all nations as Jesus promised. The fig tree has budded, and Jesus said, that the generation that saw this would not pass until all things were fulfilled. Now observe the mathematics. Psalm 90 verse 10 defines the duration of a human generation. The days of our years are 60 years and 10, and if by reason of strength they be 80 years. If you add 80 years to 1948, you reach 2028. I am not saying that Jesus will return in that year. No one knows the day or the hour, but I am saying that we are living within the prophetic window that Christ himself established. And it is precisely in this window that Iran surrounds Israel. Coincidence? But there is more, much more. There is something that many people know about this biblical passage, but few truly understand in depth. You may have heard of Matthew 24 since childhood. You may have memorized the verses in Sunday school. You may have even preached on the subject. But between knowing the words and understanding their application, there is an abyss that transforms lives. It is in this abyss that most remain stuck, the surface of the text without the depth of revelation. What you are about to understand now can completely change the way you view the times in which we live. And there is a material that deepens this reflection even further. If you feel that God is speaking to your heart through these signs, I want to present to you the digital book, The 7 Last Words of Jesus That Shook Jerusalem. This material reveals the profound meaning of Christ's final declarations before giving his life. The words that left Jesus' lips on the cross were not random. They were the pinnacle of everything he came to do on earth. To access this digital book right now, it is very simple. Look at your phone or television screen. You see a square code appearing. This is the QR code. Take your phone, open the camera app, and point it at this code. A link will automatically appear on the screen. Tap that link, and you will be directed to the digital books page. If you prefer, you can also access it through the link in the description of this video. On your phone, tap the video title or the More option to open the description. On a computer or television, look just below the video where the link appears. Thousands of people are already deepening their faith through this reading. And when you access this material, you also help keep this channel active, producing biblical content that edifies lives. Access it now and comment Amen below. Returning to the signs. Jesus did not limit himself to speaking of wars. In verse 7 of Matthew 24, he added another element, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. And in verse 9, he was even more specific. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Think of what is happening to Christians in the Middle East right now. In Syria, Christian communities that existed since the 1st century were practically eliminated during the civil war. In Iraq, the number of Christians fell from 1,500,000 to less than 200,000 in 2 decades. In Iran, converting to Christianity is a crime punishable by imprisonment or death. In Gaza, the tiny Christian community is trapped between Israeli bombardments and Hamas control. The organization Open Doors estimates that more than 360 million Christians live in countries where they face significant persecution. This represents 1 in 7 Christians in the world. More than 5,000 were killed because of their faith in the last documented year alone. Thousands of churches were closed or destroyed. It is the highest level of religious persecution since the 1st century. Hated by all nations. It is no longer prophecy, it is the news. But there is a detail in Matthew 24 that many preachers avoid mentioning. In verse 12, Jesus said something disturbing. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Observe the word wax cold. In Greek it is psygesetai. It means to become cold, to lose heat. Jesus was not speaking of people who never had faith. He was speaking of people who had love and lost it, believers who grew cold, churches that abandoned their first love, communities that were distracted by other things while the signs multiplied around them. And is that not what we see today? How many people know Matthew 24 by heart, but live as if Jesus were never coming back? How many churches discuss politics, musical preferences, and administrative issues while the prophetic clock advances? How many Christians are more concerned with the next smartphone release than with the next phase of biblical fulfillment? The love of many shall wax cold. Perhaps the greatest sign of the times is not in the skies of the Middle East. Perhaps it is within our own hearts. But we are not yet finished with the parallels. In verse 15, Jesus mentioned the abomination of desolation. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. This prophecy has a clear historical application. In 70 AD, the Roman army of Titus invaded Jerusalem and destroyed the temple. Roman soldiers raised standards with pagan symbols in the holiest site of Judaism. It was literally an abomination in the holy place. But many scholars understand that there is an even greater future fulfillment. The Temple of Jerusalem no longer exists. It was destroyed nearly 2,000 years ago. But there is a growing movement in Israel to rebuild it. The sacred utensils have already been manufactured. The priestly garments have already been fashioned. Priests of the lineage of Aaron have already been identified and trained. Everything is ready. The only obstacle? In the exact location where the temple should be erected stands the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam. Any attempt to build there would provoke a religious war of unimaginable proportions. And guess which country leads the Muslim opposition to any alteration on the Temple Mount? Iran. The same Iran that finances Hamas. The same Iran that arms Hezbollah. The same Iran that launches missiles against Israel. The current conflict is not merely geopolitical, it is eschatological. Every missile that crosses the Middle Eastern sky is connected to a dispute much larger than oil, territory, or regional influence. It is a dispute over the fulfillment of prophecy. And there is one more element that makes everything even more grave. The Iranian nuclear program. According to reports from the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iran has already enriched uranium to 60% purity. To manufacture a nuclear weapon, 90% is required. The difference is technically small. Experts estimate that Tehran could produce enough material for a bomb in a matter of weeks if it decided to move forward. 200 kilograms of enriched uranium are already stockpiled. This is enough for multiple warheads. Israel considers this program an existential threat. The very reason for the attacks in June of 2025 was to attempt to delay this capability. Natanz, Isfahan, Fordo. Names that seem distant, but that carry the potential to change the history of the world. There is something that happens when you stop to observe these events with spiritual eyes. You realize that there is no casualty. Every piece fits. Every movement makes sense within the larger plan. And the most impactful thing is realizing that all of this was announced 2,000 years ago by a man whom the powers of the time considered irrelevant, a carpenter, an itinerant preacher, a man condemned to death. This same man said he would return, and he left a path so that you would be prepared when it happened. The last words of Jesus on the cross were not cries of defeat. They were declarations of victory. They were coded messages for all generations that would come after. If you want to truly understand what Christ was communicating at that moment, the digital book, The 7 Last Words of Jesus That Shook Jerusalem, will open your eyes. Point your phone camera at the QR code on the screen or access the link in the video description. This reading can completely transform your understanding of faith, and when you access it, you also strengthen this ministry. Let us continue. Jesus said in verse 14 of Matthew 24 that the gospel of the kingdom would be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Never before in history has the gospel been so accessible. The Bible has already been translated into more than 3,500 languages. Missionaries reach remote tribes in the Amazon, in the mountains of Central Asia, and on the islands of the Pacific. The internet allows a message recorded in a simple room to reach millions of people in dozens of countries simultaneously. What once took decades to spread now takes seconds. The Apostle Paul, writing to the Colossians only 30 years after the death of Christ, already affirmed that the gospel had been preached to every creature under heaven. If this was true in the first century, with unimaginable limitations of transport and communication, how much more today? The gospel is reaching the ends of the earth, and when this is completed, the end will come. But observe a crucial point. Jesus never said that everyone would accept the gospel. He said it would be preached as a witness. The Greek word is martyrion. From the same root as martyr, the gospel would be preached, often at the cost of the lives of those who proclaim it, and the response of the nations would determine their destiny. Some would receive it with joy, others would persecute the messengers. And the list of nations that persecute Christians today includes practically all the countries where the Iran-Israel conflict unfolds. Iran, Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, Iraq. It is no coincidence that the nations most hostile to the gospel are the same ones involved in the prophetic siege against Israel. The maps overlap. Geopolitics and eschatology merge. And you are watching all of this happen in real time. But there is something that needs to be said with all clarity. Jesus gave these signs not to generate panic. He gave them to generate preparation. In verse 42, he was direct. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. Watching does not mean being paralyzed by fear looking at the sky. It means living each day with purpose. It means not postponing important spiritual decisions. It means understanding that time is short and that every choice has eternal consequences. The faithful servant, according to Jesus, is the one whom his Lord finds working when he returns. Not waiting idly, not debating conspiracy theories, not hoarding supplies in a bunker, but doing the work, preaching the gospel, loving one's neighbor, living in a way that honors the name of Christ. This is biblical vigilance. Consider the difference between the ancient and the current. In the first century, the disciples heard Jesus speak of wars and rumors of wars without having any notion of what that would mean 2,000 years later. They imagined Roman armies, swords, catapults. They could not conceive of ballistic missiles traveling at 20,000 kilometers per hour. They could not visualize autonomous drones guided by satellites. They could not imagine nuclear weapons capable of destroying entire cities in seconds. But Jesus knew. When he spoke of those days, he was seeing exactly what we are living now. The scale has changed, technology has evolved, but the prophecy remains. What were once swords have become missiles. What were once armies on foot have become fleets of drones. What were once weeks of siege have become 12 days of intense bombardment. The essence is the same. Nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, only now at a speed and scale that no previous generation has ever witnessed. The conflict between Iran and Israel will continue. Tensions will increase. More missiles will cross the sky. More headlines will shock the world. And while this happens, the church has a mission. It is not to comment on politics. It is not to take sides in secular disputes. It is to announce that there is a king who is returning, a kingdom that will have no end, a peace that no human treaty can guarantee. But this peace is only accessible to those who seek it now, while there is still time, because no one knows the day or the hour. Now think of everything you have just heard. Wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation, the fig tree budding in 1948, the gospel reaching the ends of the earth, the persecution of Christians, the cooling of love, Iran surrounding Israel. Each of these elements is being fulfilled before our eyes. And Jesus said that when you see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Near, at the doors. Do you hear the knocking? What you have just learned is not fiction. It is not a conspiracy theory. It is not a forced interpretation of ancient texts. It is documented reality aligning, point by point, with words recorded 2 millennia ago. Nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Rumors of war transformed into real missiles. The fig tree that budded in 1948 now faces the prophesied siege. But there is something Jesus made clear in Matthew 24 that many ignore. He did not give these signs to generate fear. He gave them to generate readiness. Every missile that crosses the sky, every newspaper headline, every diplomatic tension is not a reason for despair. It is a call. The prophetic clock does not stop. The question that remains is not whether these things will happen. It is whether you will be prepared when the last sign is fulfilled. Before closing, I want to leave something with you. Everything that was said here points to a central reality, the cross. It was on the cross that Jesus sealed the destiny of humanity. It was on the cross that the prophecies found their maximum fulfillment. And it was in the last words spoken on that cross that Christ revealed truths that shake any sincere heart. The digital book, The 7 Last Words of Jesus That Shook Jerusalem, is not just a reading. It is an experience of spiritual transformation. Every word of Christ at that moment carries an eternal weight. If you want to truly understand what it means to be prepared for the times we are living in, this reading is essential. Take your phone now, open the camera, and point it at the QR code appearing on the screen. A secure link will automatically appear. Tap it, and you will have immediate access to the digital book. If you are on a computer or television, open the video description and click the link. On your phone, tap the video title or the More option to see the full description. When you access this material, you also help this channel continue producing content that strengthens the faith of thousands of people. It is a simple gesture that makes an eternal difference. Access it now, and if this content touched your heart, leave your Amen in the comments. He that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved.